As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping on to the NBA Finals court, Curt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's the bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ILPsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score which would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and its Memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publisher and Broadcasting Network, in conjunction with Swick Enterprises, and we're live from the Wallingford, Connecticut home of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America which focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150-plus years of football history and memorabilia, and you can find us on the web at GridironGreatsMagazine.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host. He's a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian, specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Larkin. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
Captain, good to be back. Good to be back on the air with you, sir.
And we're back. It's the end of May, upcoming Memorial Day weekend, and we've got a pretty hot spell here, only to lead into 3 days of rain coming up for the holiday. But anyway, it is what it is. Joe, something near and dear to me, and that's third-party grading, encapsulating cards. However, in the market, there has been some major moves by PSA, and they purchased a company called Gentleman, which is adding some artificial intelligence to the grading industry. Perhaps or perhaps not. Hand it off to you now.
Yeah, I think we had a guest on, Scott Alpaugh, about a year ago. So the friend of the show, the Gridiron Great bump that we gave him. Scott has a great provenance in the hobby. He was an SGC grader. He was in charge of acquisitions at Just Collect for years. I mean, to say Scott knows just about everything about our hobby is an understatement. He's a great resource. Scott left Just Collect after 10 years and went to work for a startup, Gentleman, as you mentioned. Gentleman is artificial intelligence. They've got what they do is they do digital scanning. So you lay a card down, it'll scan it. It identifies what the card is, the year. So there's immediate identification based off of its database. It measures the card. It does UV light, looking for doctoring, touch up, power racing, etc. And then it spits out the data on the card, its dimensions, its off center, miscut. I mean, just so you're not guessing. It's not objective about 50-50 centering. It is 51-49. Measures it, compares it to a database, and then it keeps a scan of that. They call it the digital fingerprint. Every card is unique. Keeps that forever. So, like if they grade a card, miscut or touched up, and then somebody sends that card in a year later to try and ramrod it through and get it graded again, it immediately recognizes that card. It's pretty fascinating. This artificial intelligence.
What's interesting about the whole concept, and you and I briefly touched base on this earlier today, what's going to happen to all, for example, the doctored 48 leaps that are going to come to the market, possibly? Are they going to be discarded? Are they going to be, obviously reholdered? Or what? What are your thoughts about it? Because I'm saying to myself, this could really upend a lot of very, very big ticket cards and make them basically worthless. So,
yeah, you're exactly right, Bob. I mean, which is why is the hobby ready for black and white? A computer. It's like calling strikes and fouls, or strikes and balls in baseball. A computer could do that,
right?
But I mean, it's not that. I mean, here you have a computer, telling you this has been altered. And SGCs does something similar, where their cards go under a UV light and they can see where a card had a crease in it, but you soaked it. They soaked it and pressed the crease out. That shows up under UV light. So does recoloring, etc. And that's why we were talking about that. Is the hobby ready for that? I mean, because if you think you have a trimmed Sammy Baugh Leaf PSA 8 that you paid $30,000 for, then you send it to them and you find out it's actually trimmed. I mean, do you even want to know?
Right. And I was saying to myself when I was reading this, when we were looking at this this morning, I said to myself, okay, so the hobby for me has now evolved around guys who wait in line at Walmart when the boxes first hit the store shelves, only to resell them to the local dealers for double what they're paying, only to have the local dealer sell a $40 box of Score football cards now for $100, and a computer grading cards that are going to be encapsulated into plastic forever. That's what our hobby is now? I'm a little shocked. I'm a little shocked by it, and I do agree with you. Is the hobby ready for this? And how's the hobby going to deal with many cards,
Yeah.
like you're saying, a card for $30,000 is now worth $3. You know, so our heads going to roll. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. In a way, I'm glad.
That's why, I mean,
PSA.
Yeah.
I'm glad PSA did invest the money into it because they need to. They really need to, and it'll give them a little, you know, give more credibility to a card, you know, a more valuable card. But in my opinion, it just turns me off even more so to graded cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, because, I mean, I know you don't like, you know, we were being sarcastic when you said something near and dear to your third party. I know you don't like, you know, encapsulated cards just because you like to, you know, feel, you know, touch, smell. But, I mean, one of the problems with third-party grading is, you know, people slipping cards by the goalie and getting trimmed cards into their, you know, wax or into their plastic prison. But, I mean, if that could be vetted out, if you could be 99.9% certain the card in that holder was, you know, met dimensions, was, you know, centered the way they say it is, and hadn't been doctored or touched up, wouldn't that make it better? So, yeah, explain why you said that, you know, this makes you, you know, more frustrated with TPGs.
Right. And, you know, I've had so many people over the years tell me, you know, if and when you ever bring the run to the market, meaning my 48 up base set run, everybody's telling me, you know, you got to get this graded, you got to get that graded, you got to get this graded. And I say to them, you know, that's all well and good, and I know I'm leaving hundreds of millions of dollars on the table if I don't get them graded. But at the same time, I'm saying, you know, why can't somebody like a person like me who is not into graded stuff just enjoy the sets for what they are? You know, a memory of football times gone by, and in my you know, era, the 60 to 69 era, which to me is the purest era of football, I still say to myself, why would I want to encapsulate those cards? Let them be free. Let them sit in my 8-pocket, 9-pocket, 6-pocket sheets. Let them stay in the albums and just pull the album out and look at them and enjoy them and just be done with it, you know?
I agree.
I'm not gonna, you know, if I get an extra, you know, $5,000-$10,000 for my collection, what's the point of it? I mean, you know, I would feel bad. So I think I'm actually going to probably, if the time ever comes to sell the collection, the run, I would probably stipulate you can't grade any of these cards. You're just going to have to enjoy them for what they're worth. And I know some people really freak out when I say that, but that's the way I feel about it. You know, it's but you know, I think of the flippers, and now I think of this now, and I'm saying, wow, if I was a 10-year-old kid, I'd have to ask my parents, could I have $20 to buy a pack of cards? And I'll get my 5 cards out of it and look at them and say, gee, can I have another $50 so I can get these 5 cards graded? You know what I mean? So it's a little different than before. But getting back to this,
one of the positive aspects of this AI is just how much quicker it is. Because I don't know about you, but I've watched the video on how like PSA or SGC does it.
Right.
You know, a card that physically, first of all, they have to have somebody identify what the card is. I mean, you have a human being going, yep, that's a 77 top Steve Largent. And then they type that into a computer, and then they print out a label. And that label goes on a top loader, and then that card goes to the grader. And then the grader looks at it. If you have AI that just scans the card, immediately knows what the card is, and then measures the card, looks for coloring, etc. So now you've just eliminated several touches. You've eliminated a human being looking at a card, with a chart in front of them showing what each card is, and then data entering, and then it gets handed off to a grader, and then you're printing out a label. It gets handed off to a grader. Now, so the backlogs that a lot of these TPGs are having, can we get rid of the backlog just with this, AI. Just anything, identifying the cards. You have to have a human do that. You have to have a human say, here's a scan of this card, and this is the 77 large and, Topps rookie card, so they have to have that data, and somebody's got to enter it, but getting entered once. And then every year when the new, foil refractor prism pink, halos come out, they have to update that. But, it's, so just, reeling in grading times is a huge benefit of this. It's no longer objective. You don't have a human being looking at something. I don't know, but it, as you and I were discussing it kind of reminded me of like if you knew when you were going to die, would you want to know? Because
exactly.
If you have a $30,000 48 leaf card, do you want to know if it's trimmed or not, if it's encapsulated already, or do you just want to live in your bubble? That's why when we were talking about this, I was like, is the industry ready for this? Question mark. Do we want to know if our existing cards are doctored or real, or do we not want to know? And do we want to? Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting topic. Technology changing our hobby, but yeah.
I think one thing it's going to put pressure on, even more so than we see now, is on open pack.
Yeah.
I think a lot of big packeted investors, collectors, lack of a better term, are going to say, well, I'm not going to waste any more money now on a PSA 10 from 1948 because I don't know if it's real or not. But I will, take as much money as I humanly can and buy unopened wax of any sort, any year, anywhere, and get it wrapped and put it away, yada, 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 and see where that goes. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see your point.
And unfortunately for you, some people start thinking the more astute ones are going to say, well, what about printed sheets from years ago? They're rare. So I got enough, the 100,000 I was going to put in this, I'll start buying up uncut sheets now and put those away, putting pressure on your market. So, where does all this go? What is going on? It just amazes me. It truly amazes me, and it's good and it's bad. And I think the flipping of the wax is really hurting the hobby right now, and it's not being addressed in any way, shape, or form, with the exception of Target saying they're not going to sell it anymore. And I really think a Panini that owns every football card printed, basically, is more concerned with just pumping stuff out to satisfy the flippers and the box rips than they are with anything that has to do with collecting a set of cards that they produce in a year. And that's the way I feel about it. I mean, you could try marketing any way you want. To me, it's garbage marketing that they're doing right now because I don't know who they're satisfying. They're not satisfying you and I if we want to go into a store and just buy a couple of packs and break them open. I really, I say to myself, if I don't open another pack, that's fine. I got my memories of what I opened. They're good memories. I enjoyed it. But you know what? I'll be darned if I'm going to, play this game to, pay an inflated price so that some, flipper guy who's got nothing better to do with his life, driving from one Walmart to another, cornering the market on unopened wax. And I blame the dealers at the same time spending the money and buying them from them too. So, not a good situation. But it's this gentleman. I think is going to really, I think, down the road, revolutionize a lot of things. And then there's going to be a big push now for more AI in the market, and there's going to be a lot of other startup companies down the road trying to come up with the technology and doing the same thing.
Yeah.
While I sit and read my Green Bay Packers yearbook from 1965 in peace. In peace. Guys, Our special guest is here, and I'd like to move on and introduce him. Our special guest tonight has been a guest on our show back in 2012 and 2017. He is the author of 7 books and is currently working on a biography of Bronco Nagurski, which is scheduled to be published in August of 22 by Rowman and Littlefield.
Wow.
He was a former writer from my old Bob Swick's Football Time newsletter in the 1990s when he was a grad student. And today he's the head of the research library at NFL Films. I'd like to introduce a good friend of ours, and of the show, and of the magazine, Mr. Chris Willis. Chris, welcome to the show this evening.
Thanks for having me, Bob and Joe. It's good to be back. It's always great to talk to you guys.
2017. You've only been on. Bob said 2012 and 2017. I was like, man, it seems like we talk to you all the time. That stunned me.
Yeah,
I remember talking about your great book last time.
Yeah, it's been a while. Time does fly, but it's always good. It's good to talk to the Gridiron Greats.
It's amazing. Snap your fingers and the time just flies by. And when you brought up on VFC the mailing envelope from the old newsletter, man, did I really bring back memories for me. And I'm saying to myself, wow, that was almost 30 years ago that I did that newsletter. And you were there in the beginning and literally to the end. And I do appreciate all your efforts. And that was definitely a labor of love back then, doing that newsletter.
It was great to be a part of. When I saw VFC and somebody had mentioned, I was like, I think I still have those, and so it was fun to pull them back out, take a look at them, and like I said, they're all. I don't know why I kept them in the envelope. I have an envelope for every one. Like every issue I got, I just kept in the envelope for some reason, and so I all those early issues, they still have my old address, from grad. So it was very fun to be a part of. Wow.
Well, that really, and I didn't even save an envelope. I mean, I got the full run of issues, and I got some of my notes from some of the newsletters. But man, oh man, see that envelope again. I had a friend of mine design that logo many years ago, and we used it for a while, especially for the envelopes. So that was good memories. Chris, I'm going to hand off to you. Please tell our audience, how did you become a fan of football and football history?
Well, that's an easy one for me. Growing up in Ohio, it's kind of almost, you're born with it, especially Columbus, Ohio, right near Ohio State. And but the majority of, like I said, you grow up Ohio State, you learn about Ohio State football, but also that my dad owned a used bookstore, for 30 plus years in Columbus, and so hanging out at his store a lot, I would always gravitate to the sports section, and for some reason the football books, and so when you combine, starting to learn about Ohio State, you're watching football, and you feel that sort of passion there in Columbus, with reading about it, camping out there and reading any football book I could get, because usually, even now it tends to do that too. Especially used books, you can find football books for like $1. They weren't expensive. They weren't the best sellers, the Charles Dickens or old sort of bestsellers that you had to spend a lot of money to get. It was very cheap to buy football books. So that's where it's sort of the early part of becoming a fan and learning about history, through my dad's bookstore.
Wow. I got to ask you a little off script. You obviously have a library of football books, right? I would assume.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's your estimate of how many books you actually have? Do you have any idea?
Wow.
Or?
Yeah. Oh my God, I should know that. It's a little different because my personal collection, I probably have like 300 or 400, but some of my collection is we have one at NFL Films at work. And that's probably, a couple thousand books, so, so I've kind of like some duplicates I kept, like the ones that were mine. So I sort of incorporated my library. So it was probably like double that, but because your house is only so big and you can only display so many books sometimes. And so it's kind of a combo, like, but I have, you know, like, it probably doesn't sound like much when you say, you know, 300 or 400, but between that and work, you know, like that, I've sort of, you know, combined, you know, some of the ones that, you know, that we have a huge, you know, sort of one there at NFL Film, so combo there.
See, I'm facing that dilemma right now because we're moving to Southport, North Carolina, probably the end of summer, beginning of summer, end of summer, depending on a few factors. And I'm looking at my books, my media guides, and other assorted publications, and I'm looking at probably like 2,000 to 3,000 pieces. And the cost to move it, and because of now with the higher diesel costs and everything, the cost of our move is astronomical right now. So at any time, somebody could get a box from me, and you're going to know what you're going to get. You're going to get something that I have that and it's too expensive for me to move this thing. Anyways, but I was just curious to see how many you actually had, because I separated mine from paperbacks to hardcovers, and then I further separated those that I have dust jackets on and those that I don't. And then my media guide collection, I bought and sold a lot of media guides over the years. But I do like media guides because to me they're very historical reading and you know, wealth of information there, to say the least. But okay, I didn't mean to get off script, but I was curious to ask you that because being an author, obviously, most authors that I know have nice libraries at home, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, Chris, again, thanks for being on the show. I think the last time you were on, you were talking about your Red Grange book, was it?
Yeah, I think it hadn't come out yet, but I was you know, making research trips and sort of putting it together. So it came out in 2019 when NFL 100 season. So I think the last time I was on, I was, you know, kind of like what I'm doing now. So we sort of talked about, you know, it's going to be coming out.
Yeah, what a great book. That was just, I'm a massive Red Grange fan, collector. So I mean, yeah. So I mean, to have a book on one of my favorite subjects was awesome. So your new book, Bronco Nagurski, just number 3 Chicago Bears, you know, teammate of Red Grange. Yeah, tell us a little bit about it. How you pick a subject, how you gather all your information, the writing process.
Yeah, I mean, this one was probably the most different sort of idea that came about. You know, most of my ideas, you know, I'm sort of passionate about the subject, and you know, I know, like, you know, the Columbus Panhandle book or Joe Carr. I mean, they were from Columbus, Ohio, so I knew I wanted to write about, preserve that history. You know, but with Bronco, it was a little different because I didn't plan to write a Nagurski book. You know, what happened was Tony Nagurski, the son of Bronco, for the Red Grange book, he had some little bit of research, and then he gave me an interview, and so I started, you know, a sort of connection there, and then he read the Red Grange book at the end of 2019, and he always wanted to see his father's story in print. You know, there was one book done by Jim Dent, I want to say 2006, 2005, 2004, somewhere in there, or early 2000s, I think it was, and it was okay. He thought it was, you know, it was an okay effort. It was a lot of the same stories, the plow story. He runs into the brick wall at Wrigley Field, you know, and he comes back in 1943 after, you know, 7 years in wrestling. So, and you know, it's got some fun stories, but it also frustrated him and me too with reading, because I think Jim Dent's a really good writer, but he sort of had a lot of made-up language, and that was not, I don't like that. Like, you know, oh, give me the ball, I'm going to get this touchdown, like, in the huddle. Like, well, Bronco never said that. You know, he would never talk in the huddle, you know. So Tony wanted to see his story, so he reached out to me at like December of 2019, and we talked about it, and we sort of got on the same page, and then that sort of led to me, and especially with the research, you know, like the best thing about Grange, there's so much stuff written about him, there's so much stuff available. Unfortunately, he passed away, but the family was going to be able to give me a lot of the research and the material. So once that happened, I was like, okay, I have to do this. I can't pass up. I'm always looking for, if I'm doing these passionate projects, I want to find great research. Well, this is great research right here. There were scrapbooks, there was letters, there was files that they had kept and stuff. So Tony had allowed me to look at anything, and then the interview, the sons and daughters. Actually, Bronco had 6 children. Bronco Jr. was the oldest. He had passed away in 2011, but the other 5 were still living. So I was able to interview them, through this process. So that's how it came about, and like I said, it's been a really good opportunity. Like I said, hopefully I do, him justice. If you read the Grange book, it won't be quite that super detailed, just because I really wanted to do Red Grange in a detailed manner. That was like over 500 pages. This one will be closer in the 325 range. But very good research, and like the material has been tremendous. So that's how it came about.
That 325 includes the I was working on a joke for that. Sorry, Chris. That I missed. I was thinking of some sort of some sort of connect the dot thing in the middle, but never mind. And they can't all be home runs.
yeah. I guess you say, the 325 would include like what I call back matter. You're talking like the index, the notes,
Yeah.
So, but still should be able to plenty of be able to tell the story.
Yeah. Well, what a great subject. Yeah, just cool. And I would obviously be remiss if I didn't ask the question that all of our listeners are thinking right now. When can we expect a very in-depth 1,000-page book on Steve Largent, Seahawk great?
Well, I think going back to 2012, when I appeared on the show, you asked me that same thing. So that's about 9 years later. You might be waiting a little bit longer,
All right.
So it's probably not the answer you want to hear, Joe.
I think I'm a patient man, Chris.
Yeah, I think he's worthy of it. When you deal with, as much as you have players that are living, it would be really nice to be able to sit down with Steve and interview him about his entire career and his life. So, but that's always a little bit more difficult task, So,
if you get an interview with Steve Largent, and you need someone to come and help hold the microphone or take notes or set up, I'm your guy. I'm your Huckleberry, Chris.
Okay, you're on the West Coast too, so I you're close. So yeah.
Yeah, I think he lives in Oklahoma now. I forget. He's from Oklahoma. I think he went back, but anyways.
Yeah, I think he's living there now. Yeah. Oh. Well, hopefully before I die, I'll read that book. So get it out. Unbelievable. It's got to be, again, off script. It's got to be incredible speaking to family members of these legends, and especially with Nagurski's family, because they're really the people you've written about, the time frame you've written about, to me is just so overlooked because people can't relate to it because they don't really bother with history, especially the history of the game. But at the same time, the family members got to be utterly frustrated when, their, father, uncle, whatever, did so much for the game, and there's literally no recognition whatsoever, or even a history of what they did, So the void you're filling is just incredible, and especially with the Nagurski. I really don't know of anything that's really been written on him over the years in any way, shape, or form, with the exception of a handful, couple chapters here and there in different books, and that's about it, It's amazing.
No, I appreciate that question, Bob. Like, that's one of the main goals why I do what I do, and I love what I try to do these projects, because as much as I love the game today, like I've worked 25 years at NFL Films. Now it's Thursday, Sunday, Monday, some Saturday games. I'm watching every NFL game, and it's great. The game's great, the players are great. Like that, there's some bumps in the road, but for the most part, I still enjoy today's game, and the players are great. They're and even when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, 90s, like all those players are great. Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, my two favorite players, are great. But I think most people know about them. Like that. Although certain generations start to, like that. Even people, do they know who Terry Bradshaw or Roger Stark? And that what makes NFL films great for the last 50 plus years is we're a visual sport. We show the highlights. We show you. We have players' mics. We have sound. You have all the Super Bowls, and the history is great of that. But there is also 50 years before the Super Bowl started that is just as valuable and educational, and you'll learn that history, and that's the history that fascinates me. And like I said, I can write about anything. I've written 7 books. This will be book 8. Only one of them is sort of a modern tale. I wrote about one of my favorite teams, the 84 49ers. But I love Joe Montana, but you know what? I'd rather write about Bronco Nagurski and Red Grange and go in depth and find whatever I can, because I think it's worth it. I think that preserving that history and telling those stories, like that, I don't know how many books I'll sell, but that doesn't matter. Hopefully people will read them, and then hopefully people 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I still read books, that were written 50 years ago. One of my favorite books is The Game That Was, written by Myron Cope. It was an oral history book. It was published 1970, 51 years ago. Yep. But he was, like I said, I was just born a little bit later, and I would have loved to sit down with Red Grange and Clark Hinkle and Johnny Blood and Joe Guyon and those players that he wrote chapters about. Even when I did the Dutch Clark, I listened to to those interviews and stuff. So it was, those things are, like I said, educational, and they're valuable, and I think it's worth telling, to a new generation or newer fans. Like I said, take nothing away from the new, like I said, the new players, or like I said, Patrick Mahomes is great, but there's going to be an entire record of his entire career on film, on TV, through interviews of Patrick Mahomes. Well, we don't have that. Like you mentioned, like some of the projects, like nobody's written a book about Don Hudson. He's maybe the second greatest receiver of all time, and there's not a book. And there hasn't been a book in 100, or I guess he started in 1935. So, 85 years since he retired, 75, and nobody still has written a book about Don Hudson. So there's still plenty of stories to be told, plenty of projects like that, and that's like that. I just love that era. As much as I love the new era. That's where it came from. That's why I can enjoy it so much. I'm fortunate to work with NFL Films for a long time, and because of these players, and not to talk about, but like you mentioned, when I talk to the families, it's great. I don't get to talk to Red Grange. He didn't have any children, but I was able to meet some nieces and some great nieces and some nephews. Like, they were great to talk. That's about as close as I'm going to get. Same thing with Bronco, like the children, and I get to know them a little bit better. Through those conversations. So because there are some, like when I did the Panhandle, those families were so great to talk to me. They were like, we haven't talked about my dad's football career in like 50 years. Or my grandfather. They learn more. They dig through something. They find a photo, or they go through the scrapbooks or something, and they find more information, and they say, hey, look, this might be useful. I didn't know my grandfather did that, and it's just very rewarding to hear and to see. So,
wow.
Don Hudson. Well, that's a name. You're 100% right. That's a guy I know, but I don't know the details. It's so interesting. You nailed it. My wife's sister lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We go visit quite a bit. Like 3 years ago, I had the privilege of going to a Gophers game, with them, and it's kind of fun to look up and see number 3 Nagurski, around the perimeter of the place. Just fun, So when you're researching, books like this, you mentioned interviewing Nagurski's kids. You gotta have some good stories you bump into, just, stuff that makes you smile, even unique. For as many books as you've written, just, even unique things happen every book.
Oh, absolutely. It's those are the things that, like I said, those are what I call the golden nuggets, or the golden tickets, like, or something that's like a hidden gem, because, you can only, like I said, try to find out as much as you can, but, but sometimes you hit a wall and you're like, oh man, if I knew more a little about this, or you learn, like with the Red Grange, it was very nice to meet them, because one thing that I wrote about in that book that, I was kind of proud of was his relationship with his wife. Margaret, if you read anything else about Red and Margaret, he married a stewardess and they were married for 49 years. And that's the story you get. And if I just took that with a grain of salt and didn't really look into it, I'm like, But when I looked into it, I was like, oh, wait, she graduated from high school. She graduated with a teaching certificate to be a teacher, but she wanted to see the world. So she went to Chicago and she became a nurse, because you had to have a nursing certificate and degree to be a stewardess. You just weren't, you just, oh, wow, here's a woman, a pretty woman that they hired. No, you actually had to study nursing to be a nurse, to be an early stewardess, in the late 1930s and 1940s. So she was like highly educated, a very accomplished woman when she met Red. And so, but if I just took, the one article that I found and didn't investigate, so those are the hidden gems that you kind of flesh out. And sometimes you get that from a family member, like you didn't know, or you learn stories and stuff, or you learn a little bit more that leads you in another direction and you investigate there. So I do agree with you. That's perfect thing, Joe, is like you get to learn some certain things that might not necessarily be readily available, or if you only read only one or two articles,
Like, do Nagurski's kids, do they have memorabilia, of their dad? I mean, one of the greatest football players, for the Bears, for the NFL. I mean, do they collect stuff? Is there, it's got to be interesting. I've always wondered stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Broncos kids, they don't have hardly any memorabilia. They had the scrapbooks and the letters and articles, tons of that stuff that Tony sent me. Because you might know, you might forget now, when he passed away, they made the Bronco Nagurski Museum. It's like the only museum dedicated to an individual. There might be something on Jim Thorpe in Oklahoma, but so they donated a lot of his memorabilia to that museum. So if you go to International Falls, which is in the middle of nowhere up there, you get to Minnesota, so you might want to venture up to, International Falls. There's a museum. It has like his Hall of Fame jacket, his Hall of Fame ring, some of, I think there's a number 3 jersey, you mentioned the Bears. So there's a lot of that. I think his wrestling belt and stuff like that is on display there. And it's a very good, like I said, it's a small town, so to see those. So they would have some of that stuff, but because they wanted to honor their father this way, sort of, make it educational, for kids to be able to see what, he's the greatest person to ever come out of International Falls, or most famous, or especially an athletic accomplishments. That stuff is on display there.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know that most of their personal collections went to that museum. See, that's very selfless. That's pretty cool.
Amazing. Chris, question for you. And I'm sure for a lot of people, in my opinion, you get a dream job. You go to work at NFL Films every day. What's it like? What do you actually do there? Give us a sampling of what your typical day may be, both in season and off season.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate. Like I said, it's 25 years now. This past February, of being able to work in NFL Films. Was hired pretty much out of grad school from Ohio State to run the research library. That was what they hired me for. So they were just starting a tape library there in 1996, and we had a print library. We still have the print library, and so my day to day is mainly doing as much as I can to help our producers and get the research that they need. If it's footage, what they need. So if they get a project, hey, they're doing the Steve Largent Football Life. Where's the best footage? Where's the interviews? Where's the off-field shoots? We've covered him pretty good. So I just sort of steer them towards that. And then if they want print material, like that, we have books, magazines, newspapers, media guides. Like we have all that type of stuff available. Some of it is available online. Whether it's like Sports Illustrated articles, but a lot of stuff's not online. So you could, so we still want that available to them. So. And then I check scripts, like there's a lot of day-to-day stuff, you can check scripts. I don't edit quite as much like that. I'm not a true producer, but I have done some editing. So I've worked on like the Hard Knock show on HBO, our draft, VODs, and things like that, All or Nothing that was on Amazon. So every once in a while, depending on staff needs, I might get plugged in to do a project like that. So on the day-to-day, like I said, just try to contribute as much as I can to making the shows better and defining, especially new research, for the shows.
Now, does the library actually have like? The library actually have like, for example, complete run of, let's say, sporting newses from the 60s into the 80s with the football sections, Pro Football Weekly, stuff like that, or is it more microfilm or whatever type of thing?
No. We don't really have anything on microfilm. It's all like print, all original. We don't have like complete runs.
Wow.
We pretty much had a complete run of Sports Illustrated until like the last couple of years, when it went to like, one issue a month or whatever.
Okay.
So I do get the Pro Football Preview every year, but we pretty much have a complete run of Sports Illustrated, but we have a decent amount just because NFL Films didn't get started. Like our media guides really start like in the late 60s. We tried to fill in the gap with media guides or yearbooks. That stuff can be, as you guys know, in the memorabilia, that stuff can be expensive. So we've tried to fill in the gap. Same thing with sport magazines. Like Steve has this huge collection of the sports magazines at the time from like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Then he slowed down, So I tried to fill in the gaps a little bit in certain areas, but we're not quite at that level to where we have complete runs. But we do have like Pro Football Weekly, Football Digest, all that. We have some of it to where, if there are needs, I don't have to, bug the Pro Football Hall of Fame to try to get articles that we really would like, it's a good library like that, and it does the job of what we need. So.
Wow, I can only imagine if I worked in something like that, I would be. They'd be in heaven. Wow. Incredible. Pull out a Pro Football Weekly from 1967 or whatever type of thing. Yeah. Just that amazes me. Truly amazes me. Well, let's
Bob, you're the publisher of Gridiron. You're the publisher of Gridiron Greats. You've got the dream job most people dream of.
I would say that we do have a complete run of Gridiron Greats from issue number 1 with Rockney on it. There is that.
Oh, no way.
Library. Yes, this is complete.
That's really cool. Huh. That's really cool. I like it.
I think I was a charter subscriber. I think we have them from Newt Rockney, the issue 1 all the way through.
Yeah.
I remember when I took it over, Steve's name was on it. That he was they were subscribing to it, and then when you took over. And I remember, I remember when Steve passed. Then I'm pretty sure I was sending you the copies also. I don't remember now, but I said, "Wow, NFL Films takes on GG, so that's pretty cool." I know the Pro Football Hall of Fame has a complete run of Gridiron Greats also. So, but Greg Tratner helped them with that because I know he donated some of the early issues to them. Well, that's good. That's good to know. Gridiron Greats everywhere.
So they'll live there forever. So
that's really cool. Chris, kind of two-parter. I wanted to flip these around. Are you a collector? Because like when I think of Nagurski, when I think it's the 35 Chickle set. when I think of, Grange, all kinds of things come to my mind, but, either the 33 Sports King or his 26 Spalding. I mean, are you familiar with all that you collect? I mean, anything? It's got to be hard.
I'm pretty familiar with everything. I could say I have probably 2 careers or 2 lifetimes. I was a big collector, pretty much. Well, I wouldn't say big collector, but I collect top cards every year. I would buy them and try to build the sets. I like doing that. And then because I was so close to the Hall of Fame, I would get extra Hall of Fame cards, and when I would go up there for induction weekend, I would try to get autographs. I loved autographs. And same thing with books. One of my big things, which was really nice in the 80s, you could do today, probably real impossible to do, is I could write to Hall of Famers, either through the Hall of Fame or if you find an address. Sports Collectors Digest sometimes would list guys' addresses.
Wow.
And I would write to Hall of Famer and say, because my dad kind of said, I think you can get 2 autographs. So what I would do is I would write to, like, Johnny Unitas, hey, I have your book, titled whatever, would like you to autograph. Would it possible I could send you the self-addressed bound envelope? You wouldn't have to pay for it. So they would write me back. So I have letters, like quick notes that say, yeah, just send the book and I'll sign it for you, Johnny Unitas. And I would mail the book and then he would sign it to Chris. Like all my books are signed to Chris, Best Wish or whatever. So I would have this nice little letter, and then I would get the book back in, another couple of weeks. I'd send the book back and stuff. So I collected a lot through pretty much through college. Then when you had the boom in 88, 89, 90, 91, I kind of sort of stopped collecting cards because it was just too much and it was too expensive. And I was just like, you know what, I like the print material more, the programs, newspapers, magazines, photos. And so now I don't collect much of it because the stuff I like is too expensive. Early, as you guys know, early NFL stuff and 20s and 30s stuff. It's not cheap to find. They're hard to find to begin with,
yep.
So it's usually pretty expensive. So the only thing I kind of collect now is photos. A lot of times because I can use them with my book projects, like a few of the grain stuff. If you look through that photo spread, some of them were these unique ones that that nobody owned or in public domain or whatever, and I was able to get them, and they just make the book so much better, make my research so much better. So I lean towards that, and then Red Grange Barnstorming Tour, obviously pretty expensive stuff. So which I'm kind of sometimes I don't have a lot of extra money. Everyday life gets in the way. So if something came up, I'm like, okay, that's too expensive. Okay, I feel better about it.
Well, when you write that Steve Largent book, Chris, when you write that Steve Largent book, feel free to reach out for me, and I will give you everything I got on loan and let you use it, permissions and everything for the book.
Yeah. So thank you. But
you glazed right over that, didn't you?
But yeah, so like that, I have some of the tour programs and tour tickets and a lot of photos. So that's what I collect now.
Right. And for books, I mean, you kind of mentioned that. You're like, what I collect, sometimes goes into books, sometimes not. I mean, like you mentioned earlier what your favorite book, was, and, you've touched on, I loved Monsters of the Midway, one that you touched on earlier. It's like, of the books you've written, I mean, I guess it's like asking what your favorite child is, but, of your books you've written, which one's your favorite? Which one do you think is the best?
I know I like that. I mean, I don't mind getting that question. And it's actually kind of easy. Like I said, I don't want to take away from any of them, really, like you said, because I think they all have some value and some educational, but no, there's 2 that are my favorite, and very heads and shoulders above the some of the other ones. The first one is the Joe Carr book that I wrote. Former president of the NFL, because I got to know the grandson of Joe Carr from Columbus, which is my hometown. The NFL office building is still there where he worked out of. I walked by it growing up all the time at Broad and High, and then figured it out that was it after research. But just writing that book, because I didn't think there was as much written one of the other good books that probably is Michael McCambridge's America Game, and he picks up sort of like around World War II, but nothing was written about Joe Carr in the early years as much. So writing about his life and preserving his life and then writing about the NFL in the 20s and 30s, it just was a tremendous experience, and it's one of my favorite projects. Probably Project 1. I have 1 and 1A, and it came out so well. I thought my writing was a little better at that time, and it just came at the right time. So the Carr biography, which came out in 2010, and then the Red Grange biography in 2019,
Yes.
I set out to write. I actually had to scale that back by like almost 100 pages. Like I wanted to write the definitive biography of Red, so I tried to find as much as I could. That was almost 20 years in the making. Like I started collecting Red, when I started at films like in 1998, when eBay kind of just started. That was like the first things I bought on eBay, because back then in 1998 you couldn't find this stuff. Like you couldn't find a lot of Red Grange stuff. Whether it's photos or movie stuff or the Barnstorming tour stuff or just some research items. And now you can find it all day. It's on there a lot more. But back then, so I was like, oh, that's great. That's only $5. It's only people were just trying to sell anything then. And I was gathering all that stuff, which paid off when I wrote the book, because I was like, you know what, and so that project was near to my heart. Like I always knew I was probably going to write something on Red, and the NFL's 100th season was like the perfect tie-in. My publisher liked the tie-in. He's the first sort of NFL superstar who did all these things, and so the Carr biography and the Red Grange one, like they're a little bit above, probably some of the other ones, just because of the time I spent, and they're both in depth, and like that. So those would be my two favorites.
Good choice.
Wow.
I like it. And
great.
And I agree with you that the 10-year goal, you got to plant that flag on goals. The 10-year goal for the Largent book.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it. Okay.
We're running out of time. Final thoughts and any advice for a beginning writer or a beginning collector of football?
Yeah, I mean, I probably said this, you might have asked me that before, but I think the key is just to find something you're passionate about. Like if you want to collect Steve Largent and you're passionate about Steve Largent, then go do it. Whether you're a collector or whether you're a writer. Like don't worry about what people might say or worry about how many people might read it. Like if you want to write something, about Don Hudson or Mel Hines, or you want to write something about Bobby Lane or Joe Montana, like if you're passionate about it, or about the 1960 Jets or whatever, like if you're passionate about it, that'll come out. It'll come out in your collecting. It'll come out in your writing. Because you'll go the extra yard. I think you'll go the extra effort to find certain things or to dig and find something. You'll spend an extra 2 or 3 hours on newspapers.com trying to find newspaper clippings. If you're passionate about it. So that's what I always tell young writers or even young collectors, like, hey, if you're passionate about it, then that's the reason to do it, because you love it, you like spending the time to do it, and you're finding things that you enjoy. So that's what I would say.
Good.
Very true. Great advice. Well, Chris, thank you for being on yet again, and we're really looking forward to your book on Nagurski. I'm sure it's going to be another great historical write-up, and a lot of unknown information will be coming to light once again, and I'm sure it's going to be a big hit. Thanks for being on, and we'll be in touch.
No, thanks for having me, Joe and Bob. You guys are always great to talk to. Like I said, we should do this a little bit more often, but I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
Chris Willis, author, coming out with a new book on Bronco Nagurski. Joe, we're going to go into our 2-minute warning and wrap up. I'm going to hand off to you what you pick up on tonight's show.
What a great guy. Seriously. He's doing the Lord's work here, writing books about the people that we all want to know about. I mean, some of my favorite books are by Chris. I love it. I have really stunned when you rattled off the dates, Bob, that it had been that long since he's been on the show, because it seems like we bump into him. I guess it's just because his book is still, his Grange book is still on my nightstand. It's, tucked up away, but I see it all the time. It's interesting.
And what I'm even more amazed about is I've known Chris for over 28 years now, and it just seems like yesterday with the newsletter started. And here's a guy who wrote articles for me and the newsletter, and he's one of the best authors around for this type of NFL and football history books. It's just incredible, truly incredible to me. It's just amazing. I'm very humbled by knowing him, and I'm very humbled by the whole process since I started writing about football memorabilia back in 80, 89, 90, and you're going on 32 plus years now. I've been writing about it, so it's a heck of a long time. Amazing, truly amazing.
Yeah.
Real quick, if you're not a subscriber to Gridiron Greats magazine, what are you waiting for? GridironGreatsMagazine.com. 30 seconds. Final thoughts. Joe.
Just always great to be back on the show with you, Captain. Best seat in the house, sir.
Thank you, Joe. And we'll be back probably next week with another show. Until that time, thanks for listening.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.